Anybody here can identify with that? Yeah. Well, we are going to be starting a new series today called Creating Spaces, Giving Yourself Some Breathing Room. And I want to say that, that this message series is more for me than probably it is for you. This week, I think that it's so ironic, and I think that God's just kind of been laughing at me this week because, you know, I wasn't planning on doing this series. We had 8 weeks slotted for the series Escaping the Institution on what it means to be a New Testament church. And as I was sensitive to the movement of the Holy Spirit, I thought that we had done enough and probably needed something to kind of shift gears. And during the sermon series, I heard people saying, you know, Pastor Mark, I feel guilty because during that series, Escaping the Institution, I felt like you were kind of telling me I wasn't doing enough. And my life is so busy that I feel like if I just try to cram one more thing in it, it's all going to come crashing down. And I can identify with that. And so I started looking for resources to do a series on busyness. And I came across a series by Andy Stanley at North Point called Breathing Room. And so I sat down and I listened to the first message and I thought, good Lord, I need this. Like, I'm not doing well in this area, right? I was so busy this week that I didn't have time to finish my sermon on busyness. And as you'll see, I have handwritten notes instead of typed notes. So of all the weeks that God puts this series on my heart, He picked this week as a way of laughing and saying, you know, Mark, you need help in this area too. So this is really for me. I am watching the Andy Stanley sermon series, Breathing Room, and I'm letting him be my pastor for the next 4 weeks. And so again, this is really for me, and you're just going to have the benefit of hearing what I'm learning. So I hope that what God is teaching me is also going to be beneficial to you. And I want to start out by telling you a little bit about what happens before my youngest son, Jackson, comes to my house. Okay? For those of you that don't know, I have my youngest son is Jackson. He's 9 years old, and he lives in Wilmington, North Carolina. And although I get to see him during the holidays and summers, it's not nearly enough. And so as I prepare for him to come and visit me, I get so excited. And I go into his bedroom, and I begin to clean. Because what happens is when Jackson comes, he's like a little tornado, and the room gets torn up, and by the time that he leaves, I don't ever have to go back in that room again, so I just close the door, and it just stays destroyed until the next time that he's about to come. And then that week, about a few days before Jackson gets there, I take time and I go into his room and I organize everything. And so a lot of times I'll go through his toys because he's outgrown some things, and I know that if I wait till he gets here, he'll say, no, Daddy, don't give that away. So as a good father, I clean out all of his stuff before he has a chance to say no. That was a joke. Jackson wouldn't agree with me. But I clean up the room, and it looks spotless, and everything's in its place, and his Pokemon books are all lined up on the counter, and his cards are all put away, and I've got these bins that my sister gave to me because she's real organized, I'm not, and so I put all the toys in the right bins, and then Jackson gets there, and you know, he doesn't get a chance to come but every 2 or 3 months. So when he comes back to my house, it's almost like he's walking into a toy store, right? These toys are brand new to him, and he gets so excited, and so he starts tearing through his room, and within a matter of 10 minutes, it's a disaster again. And so when I go to put him to bed and say his prayers, we're tripping over his toys. And it stays that way until the next time that he comes to visit. And I just tell that story because, you know, God creates us all different in terms of our personality. Some of us are very comfortable with clutter. Some of us live like we're on hoarders, and we would be embarrassed for anybody to come to our house out of fear of what they might see. And when they do come, we shove everything in the closet and lock it up tight so that they don't see the clutter. If you want to know whether you can live in clutter, just look at the back seat of your car. That will tell you the kind of person you are and where you fall in the spectrum here. But other people are really, really organized, and they can't deal with the clutter. Everything has to be in its particular place. And so if you remember, I told you about dating someone who was like that, right? And so she would come over, and I would have all my stuff on the kitchen counter, and I would go to work, and she would do her thing, and when I would come back, everything would be gone. So where's all my stuff? Well, I put it away for you, like she knew where the right place was, right? And so different people have different personalities and can tolerate clutter to different extents. Now, I want to say that some of you, your lives look like this, okay? And this is what your closet looks like, right? And if you notice, it's so packed, you wouldn't be able to get anything else in, right? And if you did, if you tried to push something in, you might get sucked in like a vortex and get pulled into it and get lost, and your family would never be able to find you again, right? Your closet might look like this. Your basement might look like this. The back seat of your car, your attic, might look like this. But what I want to say is that your life should not look like this. Right? It's okay if your closet looks like this. Again, God makes us all different. As long as you don't live with someone that this bothers, and then you're going to have to compromise in some way. But for the most part, it's okay if your life and your car, your car and your basement and your closet looks like this. It is not okay for your life to look like this. It is not okay for your schedule to look like this. It's not okay for your finances to look like this. It's not okay for your relationships to look like this. And I know, I'm busy just like you are, and I know the kind of thoughts that might be running through your head. You might say, well, this is just how my life is, Pastor Mark. Right? This is just how my life is. And this is how everybody's life is. I don't really have a choice in the matter. Like if you could come and just spend a week with me, you would realize that there's nothing that I can take out, and there's nothing that I can add. I'm redlining, and I'm at the limit. And if you could just come and spend some time with me, you would see that. Right? Everybody's life is like this. And what I want to tell you from the beginning is that God has something to say about our life looking like this. The Bible has something to say. Right? So, we get stressed out. Right? We pack our schedule so full that we can't cram anything else in. We get in the car. Have you ever experienced this? You get in the car and you're running late to an important appointment. And you feel your blood pressure rising. Your heartbeat quickens. You start sweating maybe. You're getting anxious. And then you get behind someone who's actually going the speed limit, and you're trying not to cuss them out. You're trying to keep your middle finger from popping up. Why? Because you're at the limit in your schedule. You can't get anything else in. You can't afford to be late again. And this includes our parenting too. And I want to speak to parents now. I know people that struggle with this. They feel like they got to get their kids involved in everything, right? They're scared they're going to miss out. They're young, and so we got to make sure that if they're athletic, they find what sport is good for them. So we'll put them in soccer, and then t-ball, and then and then we'll have them play flag football. Then we'll have them do volleyball and gymnastics and swimming. And we don't want our children to miss discovering what they're good at, right? And so we get them involved in all kinds of things. And we become the chauffeur, not the parent. And so we're introducing them to a lot of different things, a lot of different activities, but we don't really know our kids. It applies to our finances, right? Every time a dollar comes in, we got to spend it. Right? There's no margin in our bank account. And so we got too many bills to pay, right? And we're at the limit financially. We're redlining it. And then what ends up happening when we hit a financial bump? There's no room to move. And then we panic, right? And then stress goes up again. And then that affects our relationships. This is just all connected. And what I want to say to you is that life is better like this. Life is better with breathing room. So, what really happens is that when our life looks like the full closet, is that it affects us at the most deepest level. It affects our relationships, the things that are most important to us. And we're going to be getting back to that in just a minute. So, breathing room in your schedule means not speeding from one place to the next and getting so stressed out that you're having a hard time being kind to people on the road. It means having a little room by being early. understand? I mean, can you identify with that feeling? Remember a time when you were busy, you were speeding from one place to the other, and what that did to you emotionally and spiritually? And then imagine the times when you actually got there early. And when you got there early, what did you do? Got time. You check Facebook. No, I'm kidding. Don't check Facebook. Right? Having breathing room in your schedule means having time to talk to your family. Not just sharing space like a roommate, but actually having conversations. Breathing room in your finances means not spending every dollar that comes in and having something in savings so that when a financial bump comes, you won't go off the rails. It means having breathing room in your life means having time to come to worship. Right? Now, I want you to look around. This is not typical for us. We've been worshiping on an average of 180 during the summer. We've been trying to figure out, what's going on in the month of September. It's low attendance. And someone said to me, well, Mark, don't you know that school started back? And I said, well, of course. That's why I thought there was going to be a pickup, because people aren't going to be traveling back and forth to the beach. They're going to be here. And if they're here, then they'll come to church. And no, you don't understand. School started back. Which means that after having all that time off in the summer, they're redlining it again. The first day of school is like hitting the accelerator, and they're busy. They're trying to get acclimated to waking up early in the morning, right? And not only has school started back, sports have started back. So there's T-ball, there's football, high school football, right? Dreadnoughts beat North Miami, if you didn't know this week. The Dreadnoughts, right? Florida beat Kentucky. Come on. Florida State won too. We'll celebrate that. So all these sports have started back, school has started back, and people have not completely let go of the idea of summertime. And so they're still thinking, well, it's warm outside, and it's still kind of summertime, and so we need to get those last beach trips in before it gets cold, right? Before the holidays crank up. And so people get busy, and unfortunately, for some, not for all, church is just one thing, one option that is available on the weekend. And if we happen to have time and nothing better comes along, then we'll come to worship. Right? And the problem with that is that God created you for worship. God created you for Himself. And if we miss opportunities for worship, it's not like we missed a good ball game. We missed the healing power of the Holy Spirit in our hearts. We missed the encouragement and the inspiration. We missed the power of the presence of God that will help us to keep our priorities straight when we re-enter the workaday world. But having breathing room in your schedule also means having time to come to worship and not just being a body here, not playing on your phone, not being distracted by everything that's happening at work, right? Checking email, right? It's being able to put aside distractions and bring your whole self into this place and put it before God and say, Lord, I am here to worship you. And to be able to truly gain something from that for your spirit. It means having time to be a part of a small group. I tell people, you're too busy not to be in a small group. If you're so busy that you're about to lose your sanity, one of the most important things for you is to find a group of people that can be a support system for you. You see, we get busy and we isolate. We retire to our bedrooms and we stop hanging out with people, except maybe our families, and we're not even really, we're hanging out with them. We're not really spending time with them. We isolate, and then we wonder why everything comes crashing down, why we don't have any energy to do the things that we need to do. We need support systems. And part of what it means to be a part of the body of Christ is to find places where you can connect with other people that can support you, that can pray for you and love you and encourage you and help you to keep our priorities straight. But some people say, I don't have time to come to worship, I don't have time to be a part of a small group. And let me tell you, you're too busy not to be a part of those things. Right? And then I would also say, some people, having breathing room in your schedule means having time for daily prayer and Bible reading. Right? These are your anchors. Right? It means having space. Okay? So life is better with breathing room. Because breathing room allows us, now listen, this is really important. If you're a note taker, this is a great phrase. This comes from Andy Stanley. He says that when you've got room to breathe, you can enjoy what you do because you're not doing everything you could do. Got it? You can actually enjoy what you're doing because you're not doing everything that you could be doing. You're making choices. You're focusing on what's important. And you're not letting other people decide for you what you ought to be doing. So what is breathing room? Stanley defines it like this: the space between our current pace and our limits. Okay, the space between our current pace and our limits. How full is your schedule? When you think about that, how full is your schedule right now? How much money is coming into your bank account? How much relational capacity do you have in the bank with the people that you love? Think about that and then compare that to your limits. And I want to tell you this morning, whether you want to believe it or not, you are a finite human being. And what that means is that all of us have limits. Now, we all have different capacity for stress. There are some people here who they get a little bit of stress and they freak out. Right? Other people, especially people that are high up in business organizations, have to deal with a high level of stress. They're in charge of a lot of people, and maybe their capacity to experience stress or busyness is a little bit more. But even those of you who have an enormous, larger-than-life capacity for stress, even you have limits. Okay? And we all have a tendency at some point or another to kind of redline it and to take it to the limit to get to a point where we can't cram anything else in. And if your life is constantly pushed to the limit, if you're always living at the edge, you're not going to be able to really enjoy life. And do you know that God wants you to enjoy life? Jesus said, I have come to give you life. Life what? Abundantly. More abundantly. God wants you to enjoy your life. But you can't if you're living at the limit, because eventually you are going to lose control of your life. Your circumstances are going to take over. Other people are going to take over your life. You're no longer going to be in the driver's seat. And if you're constantly living at the limit, you're going to forfeit your freedom. You're going to forfeit your peace. You're going to be at the edge all the time. And you are not going to have a fulfilling life. And unfortunately, we live in a culture that says if you're not fulfilled, do more. Right? It's kind of like pulling the handle on the slot machine at Vegas. If I do this, eventually they'll all line up and I'll hit the jackpot. Right? But you cannot be a Jesus follower without a sustainable pace in life. You cannot be a Jesus follower without a sustainable pace. And this is why. Because if you're always at the limit, then the things of God are going to become extracurricular activities. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, what are the consequences of living at the limit? And you all, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. The first thing that happens is when you're redlining, when you're at the limit, when your schedule's so full you can't cram anything else in, when your bank account is getting depleted to the point where you're just trying to make ends meet at the end of the month, when your relationships are so strained that you're alienated from the people that you love the most, when you're at the limit in your life, what happens first is that your stress level goes up. And when your stress level goes up, you become irritable. Right? Again, think about what happens in the car. When you're late and you're running from one place to the next and someone isn't even doing anything wrong, they're just driving the speed limit and you're already, right? I mean, some people get so mad they actually pull guns out and shoot each other. Right? Stress level goes up, we become irritable. Or we go to work and we're really, really busy and we come home to our spouse and our spouse didn't have maybe such a busy day. Maybe their priorities are a little better than ours and they come in, they want to connect with us and spend time with us. And we just kind of, And they say, why don't you spend any time with me? What are you talking about? I'm busy all the time. You need to support me. Don't give me one more thing to do. You see how it affects it? Your finances, you're stressed out about your finances. When you're stressed out about your finances, you make bad financial decisions. Right? So your stress level goes up and you don't become a very nice person. Then your focus narrows. See? Your focus narrows. whenever you are stressed out, you tend to focus on the areas of your life that you're stressed out about. You start to focus on the areas of your life with no margin, and you get blinders. Right? Have you experienced this? So you're stressed out about things, and you're hyper-focused on those things, and you really lose perspective in the truest sense of the term. You forget what's really important. And let me tell you what else happens. You lose a spirit of gratitude and become critical. Right? If you're focused on what's going wrong, if you're focused on what you don't have, if you're focused on your worry and your anxiety, if you're focusing on the place with no margin, then you are not focusing on all the other things that are going well in your life. So it not only causes you to lose perspective, but then in addition to that, you lose a grateful heart. And then, instead of being thankful and grateful and keeping a positive attitude about all the things that are going well, you become hypercritical of those around you and yourself where you're worried. This happens in the church all the time. There can be so many wonderful things going on in the church. People are coming to Jesus. They're getting saved, right? We got all kind of good programs starting. We see growth. All kinds of things are happening. But if you in your personal life are stressed to the max, the minute that you hit a place in the church where you get rubbed, you can hyper-focus on that and you can lose sight of all the wonderful things that are going on here. It happens in your personal life. It happens in your business life. And the church is not exempt from that. And you know what happens when we lose a heart of gratitude? We become grumpy Scrooges, right? And it affects our relationships because we fail to be loyal to people in their absence. When we're stressed out and we're hyper-focused on what's going wrong, and we don't, especially if we don't want to focus on our contribution in that, we want to point our finger at somebody else, it affects our relationship because then we become hypercritical of those that love us the most. Right? It affects our relationships. It doesn't take much imagination to hear in our mind's space a child saying, "Daddy's always on the computer. Mommy's always on the phone. We always fight about money. Why won't you spend any time with me?" See, this is what happens whenever we live life at the limit. Our stress goes up, our focus narrows, we lose perspective, and our relationships suffer as a result. So what really brings happiness? What we value as most important, our relationships suffer the most. And I want to say, this isn't just for the young people. This isn't just for single mothers. This isn't just for people who are finally getting promoted in their career and living at the moment. This is for retired people too. So, I hang out with Charlie and Larry and Tim. Like, I know these retired guys, they can push it to the limit too. Right? This has nothing to do with the season of life you're in. It's about choices. So why do we do this? Right? Why do we live at the limit? And this is a good question because I don't hear anybody saying, "You know what, Pastor Mark, I wish I had more stress in my life. I wish I had another bill that I couldn't pay because I love the challenge of trying to make it stretch a dollar." Right? Or, "Gosh, I wish that my kids could feel a little more alone. I wish that my kids could feel more lonely than they're feeling now because that'll teach them to be independent. Bring it on, man. I love living at the limit. I love the consequences of that." You don't hear people saying that. So why do we live at the limit? And some of you might say, "Well, it's the nature of my business." Have you ever owned a business, Pastor Mark? Do you know what it's like to try to not only manage a group of people, manage employees, but to be responsible for the finances or everything? Or if you just knew the nature of my business, then you would know why I live at the limit. Live at the limit. I don't have any choice over this. Or you might say, "Well, it's something that's been inflicted upon my life. A circumstance has been inflicted upon my life." So I have a really good friend, And she was a stay-at-home mom. She had 2 kids. And when she had those 2 kids, she never planned on being divorced. And then all of a sudden, her husband decides he doesn't want to be married to her anymore and starts having an affair. It unravels. He runs off. Now, she's got 2 kids by herself. And she not only has to go back to work as a teacher, but now she's having to work 2 jobs. She's having to tutor on the side after school to make ends meet. Right? And she says to me when sometimes she'll invite me over to hang out at her pool, and we're talking. I say, I haven't seen you at church in a while. I'm busy, Mark. You know? And in addition to being a single mom now, which she didn't choose, it was inflicted upon her. In addition to being a single mom and having to work 2 jobs, she wants to give her kids everything that she would have given them had she not divorced. And so she's got them in sports and all kind of things. And so she's running ragged. And so people might say, if you knew my life, it's not my choice, Pastor Mark. I didn't choose to be a single mom. Right? Or you might say it's a season of my life. You know, I just graduated from school and I'm trying to get established in my career. I'm trying to make partner at the firm. And so it won't be like this forever. It's just a season of my life. And some of you are honest enough to be able to say, well, and I would say to those things, maybe those things have something to do with it. I don't want to be insensitive to that. I know that there are external factors in all this, some of which we don't have any control over. But some of you here might be honest enough to say, well, you know, I guess maybe part of it is that I lack self-discipline. Right? Maybe if I were a little more intentional about being in God's Word and prayerfully discerning what was really important, God might show me areas to focus and might show me areas where I need to prune. Did you know that if you want to grow prize rose bushes, you know, a rose bush will come up and there'll be, you know, lots and lots of roses, and all those roses are beautiful. It's not like there's one pretty one and all the other ones are ugly, right? And then the ugly ones team up. No, I'm kidding. Just imagine, right? The ugly ones team up on the pretty one and say, we don't like you anymore, Mama. It's not like that, right? They're all pretty roses. But if you want prize roses, if you don't cut all but the best 1 or 2, then the nourishment of that stock will have to go to all the other roses, and you'll have mediocre roses. So it's not even just about pruning bad things out of your life. It's being able to look at all the good things in your life and say, what are the prized roses in my life, and how can I prune the rest? Right? So some might say, well, I guess the reason why I push it to the limit is maybe circumstances, maybe my business, maybe this season, but also maybe because I lack self-discipline. But I want to say that I think that there's something that is even deeper, that is driving this compulsion to live at the limit of our life. It's something that Debbie and Casey and I talked about a great deal on Friday at the addiction conference that we were at. It's fear. Fear drives this. And to think about making any changes to restore our sanity and reclaim our peace scares the bejesus out of us. Right? We are so scared to tell people no because we're scared they're not going to like us, or they're going to value us less, or they're going to reject us. And so we're always saying yes, 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 yes. Right? And every time we say yes, we put something else on our schedule that becomes difficult for us to manage. So we're scared of saying no. We're scared of missing out on something. Right? You get invited to a party. If you're a single person, I can identify. Like when I get invited to a party, I'm like, well, maybe I will finally meet my Nobel Peace Prize winning supermodel missionary girlfriend. Right? So I have to go to the party. Because if I stay at home, it ain't going to happen. Right? And I really shouldn't be working at home a lot. I ought to go hang out at Starbucks. Right? And wear my T-shirt that says single and available. Like, I got to get out there. I might miss an opportunity. Those of you that are in business, and there are business parties or social gatherings after work, and you have to choose whether you go home and spend time with your family or whether you go to the social gathering to develop relationships for your career. You don't want to miss out. And this is the same with parents. We don't want our kids to miss out. Well, Pastor Mark, what if I don't get my kids in soccer and t-ball and basketball and football and gymnastics, and then they miss the opportunity to be the next Michael Jordan? Right? Or if your kid's not an athlete, what if I don't, enroll them in all of these extracurricular educational activities, and they might not find the cure to cancer because we know my kid is so brilliant, that's what's going to happen. Like my kids might miss out on something if I don't fill their schedule to the limit. Parents, let me tell you something. Your kids are not listening so much to your words as they are watching your actions, and if you live at the limit, you are teaching them to live a stressed out life that is not focused on God. Amen. It's got to start with you. So what do? Right? We solicit our children as innocent bystanders in our dysfunction. Why? Because they might miss an opportunity. They are missing an opportunity. They're missing an opportunity to connect with youth. They're missing an opportunity to develop their faith in Jesus Christ. What are we teaching them? We're scared that not only we're going to miss out on something important, we're scared that we're going to fall behind in some way. Right? If I tell my boss that I've got to establish better boundaries so that I can spend time with my family, then I might fall behind in my career and the guy behind me might take my job. Someone behind me might exceed me. Right? Someone else might get the leadership position. And I think that even a deeper fear is a fear of becoming invisible and not mattering. We do. We fear that. If I'm not going, proving myself, showing my value, then I will become unimportant. I won't matter anymore. I'll become invisible. Because we live in a culture that says the way that you gain value is by doing more stuff. And I want you to remember the series that I did called 1 Month to Live when I said, you only get one life, folks. Right? If you're a teenager this morning, if you're in the youth program, you're never going to get these years back. One day you're going to have to go to work every single day, and your life is going to change dramatically. And you can't relive your teens. You can't relive your 20s. You can't get back your 30s. I'm going to be turning, should I tell you this? December, I'll tell you so you can buy me a nice gift. I'm going to be turning 40, big 4-0, in December, 28th. I always got short-shrifted because my birthday was right after Christmas and everybody was tapped out financially, so I got like a $5 gift card to McDonald's. It's a tragedy. Don't make that mistake, right? So, we can't relive our 30s. I can't get those back. You can't relive any of our years. Once it's gone, it's gone. And your life is eventually going to slow down. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Eventually, whether you like it or not, you're either going to crash and burn, and you're going to slow down, and it's not going to be your choice, or you're going to choose to slow down. But why in the world would you want to get to 40 or 50 or 60 years old and look back and say to yourself, I have so many regrets because I just pushed it to the limit. I redlined it all the time. Right? Now, during this series, you're going to have a chance to rethink your life, to rethink your priorities, to reclaim your freedom to choose what goes in your schedule, your freedom to have some financial margin, your freedom to develop deeper relationships. And I want to move now to tell you what the foundation of all of this is. It doesn't come from me. It doesn't come from Andy Stanley. It comes from the Bible. God has something to say about this. And I want you to know that all throughout Scripture, there is this conversation that goes on between fear and faith. Do not fear is said over and over and over again by angels, by Jesus, by God. Right? Do not fear, trust, have faith. And this is really, what we're talking about is really a faith issue. It's not a scheduling issue. It's not a financial issue. It's not even a relationship issue with the people that you love. It's not that you're at the mercy of your job or the mercy of culture or the mercy of the decisions that you've already made. This is a faith issue. And I want to make that very clear by beginning to explain to you that in the book of Exodus, we see that God builds into life what we might call divine margin. Divine margin. Okay? So the first thing we're going to see that God builds in is called Sabbath Rest. Now I want you to remember that, God called Moses at the burning bush and said, I want you to go to Pharaoh and tell him, let my people go, because the Hebrews were slaves. Now this is a difficult thing for us to get our heads around because none of us have been slaves, or I don't think any of us have been slaves, right? But in a slave culture and in slave mentality, there's no such thing as a day off. Slaves are purchased by their master, and they work them sometimes to death, 24/7. Okay? And this was the world that the Hebrews lived in. And God said, Moses, go get my people. He takes them into the wilderness on the way to the promised land. And God says, you know what? Their life has gotten so messed up as slaves. Their perspective so distorted that I'm going to have to give them a new way of life. I'm going to have to give them a new way of seeing the world. And God does this by giving the law. God says, okay, when you were slaves, you were no people. You were literally nobodies. And I came and got you, and I claimed you. Now you're my people, and you're going to be a covenant people. And what that means is, to be a covenant people, is that you're not in charge of your life anymore. I am the Lord your God, and I'm in charge of your life, and I'm going to make a covenant with you, and we're going to have some agreements. And through the rules and regulations of this agreement called the covenant, I'm going to teach you a new way of life. I'm going to teach you the way that I've always wanted you to live, but a life that was taken away from you when you were put into slavery. And so God gives all of these rules. And you might say, well, Pastor Mark, I've read Leviticus. There was someone who was here reading Leviticus. There was someone in our church that was doing the one-year Bible reading, and they were reading Leviticus and telling me how difficult it was to kind of plow through that, right? So we read Leviticus, we say, why did God give all these rules? And the reason why is because God wasn't just trying to tweak their mentality. God was trying to give them an entire new way of seeing the world, an entire new way of life. And that's why there's so many rules. But we know that God simplifies it by giving us a top 10 list. And I want you to turn, if you have your Bibles, this will not be on this slide. I want you to turn to Exodus 20. And I just want to remind you of one thing on this top 10 list. And wouldn't you know, my Bible is sitting on the sound booth. Thank you, Kevin. We're going to turn to Exodus 20, and this is when God is giving a new way of life to these people. A brand new way of life, a life that God intends for them. This is the top 10 list that He gives. And I just want to begin with verses 1 and 2, because this sets the stage. So we ask ourselves the question, why should I follow this top 10 list? God says here, I am the Lord, your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Why? Because I set you free for a new life. I did something for you that you could not do for yourself, and you need to recognize that I am the Creator and you are the created, and that the purpose of your life comes from me, the direction of your life comes from me, the way you see the world comes from me, the rules by which you live come from me, the way that you organize your schedule comes from me, the way you organize your finances comes from me, the way that you structure your relationships comes from me. Right? Now look down to verse 8. Beautiful. Remember the Sabbath day and treat it as holy. I'm reading from the Common English Bible. 6 days you may work and do all your tasks. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to who? This is for God. You're giving it to God. You're not keeping it for yourself. To the Lord your God. Do not do any work on it. And not only you, okay, youth, you listening? This is for you. Nor your sons and daughters. Parents, if you're not giving your children a Sabbath because you're filling their schedules with too much stuff, you are violating God's law. You are dishonoring the Lord. Your children have to have a Sabbath. Your male or female servants. Your animals. Yeah? Give your dog a rest from the 3-mile run every once in a while. The immigrant who is living with you. Because why? Because the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and everything that is in it in 6 days, but rested on the seventh day. Even God took a break, but rested on the seventh day. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath and made it holy. Sabbath. Sabbath. In God's way of living, it is against You listening? It is against the law to work 7 days a week. In God's economy, in God's way of life, it is against the law to live life at the limit. And you see, God knew that it wasn't just that we needed a rest. It says that it was to be set aside for who? For God. And so one of the fringe benefits of a Sabbath is that we get a break from our work. But here's the real reason for Sabbath. God wants you to trust Him. God doesn't want you to think, I got to go 24/7. I got to race it to the limit. I got to redline my life, because if I don't, I'll miss out on something. Or I won't have enough money. Right? Or I'll become invisible. God wants you to trust Him. And I want you to understand, this was a radical new idea. These slaves, you see, by the time that the law is given, there's already been a few generations. And so the people that God was talking to through Moses, saying, I want you to take a day off, they had no concept of a day off. They never saw their parents or even their grandparents get a day off. All they knew was work 24/7. Now, if you understand that mentality, give me an amen. Amen. That's our culture, folks. We are living in a slave economy where we're working 24/7 and we've never even seen the possibility of it being different. And God is saying, this is messed up. It is messed up. Your life is a mess. Your schedule is a mess. Your finances are a mess. Your relationship is a mess. And it doesn't have to be this way. When the sun goes down on Friday, God says to the Jews, you are to stop. Sun goes down, stop. Whatever is not done is left undone. And guess what? It'll be there for you on Sunday morning when you wake up. Now, I'm not very good at this. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be confessing my sins at the end. But I will tell you that when I became a pastor, at my first appointment, I was fortunate enough to have a mentor named Kent Crow, who's currently the senior pastor at the Church at the Palm Beaches, Methodist Church at the Palm Beaches, which is where David McIntyre was before he went to First Church Lakeland. And Kent sat me down and he said, Mark, this is when I first started at Dundee. He said, Mark, I want to tell you something. You will never be able to do all the work that is put on your desk in one day. As a pastor, you won't. Now, I know that some of you think I only work 1 day a week. If that's what you think, come and hang out with me. I work about, on an average, 55 hours a week, and that's an average or a light day. There are some weeks when I work 60 or 70 hours a week. About 200 people that need my attention. So if I don't personally connect with you over the course of a few weeks, please don't get mad at me. I'm trying to personally connect with about 200 other people. Right? So, but he said to me, you're not going to be able to do all the work on your desk, and I promise you, Mark, if you knock off at a certain time on Monday and go home to your family and turn your phone off and don't check your email. Y'all know I don't do this. Right? Casey and y'all got an email 11:30 last night with the order of worship. But this is the advice he gave to me. If you knock off and spend time with your family and turn off your phone and don't check your email and just relax and focus on your family, I guarantee that work will be there on Tuesday morning. It won't disappear. Right? And you're not going to lose your job. And if someone gets mad at you, explain the situation. If they don't understand, then just knock the dust off your feet and go on. Right? Because you're a human being. But we act as if when we stop, something is arrested inside of us emotionally, and we think, oh my gosh, I got to keep going. Right? But the Bible says there needs to be a day when the sun goes down, you stop, and you just pick it up later. And again, God led by example by resting after creating the world. God took a break to set the example for us to show how important it was for us to rest. And in all of this, Jesus is saying these words. You ready? Trust me. Trust me in the gap. Now, the next thing is the tithe. All right? Now, I'm not going to ask you for any money today. I just want to talk to you about a principle. Because in this new economy, God didn't only give Sabbath rest. God said, you are not to spend every dollar that you make. Because God knows that if you spend every dollar that you make, you're going to be living at the limit, and it's going to have consequences for your life. So, in the ancient world, there were actually 3 tithes. So, you guys are getting off easy. There were 3 tithes in the original covenant between Israel and Yahweh. The first one was they set aside 10% to give to a class of people called the Levites. And oftentimes people say the Levites were the priests. Well, the priests were a part of the Levites, but the Levites were really public servants. They were the only group of people of the 12 tribes of Israel that didn't have their own geographical land because they were the meat inspectors. That was important for Jewish people back then. They were meat inspectors. They were police officers. Right? They were teachers. They were priests. And so it was like a 10% income tax that came out, they set aside, and they gave to take care of the Levite class. And then there was another time, they also set aside money, every single paycheck, so to speak, in order to save for 3 obligatory trips to Jerusalem, to the Holy Land during major feast days. And so they put money aside. And you see what they're doing is, there weren't banks back then, so they're actually storing them in jars, and they're seeing the money sitting on the table. Right? Money comes in, money goes in a jar, some goes out, some doesn't. And then finally, the third thing was that they set aside money to collect an offering every 3 years for the poor, the widow, and the orphan. They had 3 tithes. Right? And what we say in the church is, set 10% aside, but not just for the tithe. In Disciples' Path, we teach a basic principle. And it scares me too, I know, but it's the 10-10-80 principle. First 10% goes to God, second 10% goes to savings, and then you live on 80%. And you might think, oh my gosh, what would happen? Whoa, what would happen to my life if I lived on 80%? Folks, you could live on 80%. And wouldn't it be worth living on 80% to have your sanity back, have control of your life back, have your peace back, to not be constantly worried about when the next bump's going to come? When someone gets sick, or a child falls and breaks their arm, a car breaks down, TV goes out, good Lord, it's football season. If that happens, we're in real trouble, right? And what happens is, what's interesting, and I'm off script here, so I talk longer, I'll reel it in, I promise, but what happens is something breaks, and we use that as an opportunity to get something better. So my TV breaks, and instead of going out and buying the same kind of TV, I want to get the new Wi-Fi-enabled 65-inch TV, right? So when something breaks, it's an excuse for us to live even more beyond our limits. And so just want you to know that here we have some divine margin. We have not only divine margin in our schedule, God's saying take time off. I am commanding you to take a day off, but God is also saying we need some margin in your finances so you're not stressed out and living to the limit and redlining your finances all the time. You need to set money aside so that everything that comes in is spent. Okay? And this is again seen in the concept of gleaning. So go ahead and go to the next slide. But this is the third piece of divine margin we have here. In Leviticus 19, 9-10, again, these are rules for God's way of living. It says, when you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Do not go over your vineyard a second time or pick up the grapes that have fallen. Leave them for the poor and the foreigner. Why? Because, what does it say? I am the Lord your God. It's funny when Andy Stanley is given this reading the scripture, he says, it's almost like we changed text here. God's saying, don't go and get everything. Leave some for the poor. Then all of a sudden he says, I'm the Lord your God. And he says, what's happening here? Did we change stories? I mean, that just seems weird. And the reason why it says, I'm the Lord your God is because God's saying right there, trust me. We say, Lord, no. I've got to get it all, right? That's mine. Those are my grapes. That's my fruit. That's my harvest. Right? I got to get it all. Don't you know, Lord? Come on, Lord. You know you've got to have common sense. That's money. That's money. How can I leave that? God says, you got to leave the edges. And don't pick it up off the ground. You need margin. Space. Space. And then he says, trust me in the gap. Why would we want to glean to the edge and pick everything off the ground? Fear. Fear of not having enough. Fear of not making enough money. Okay, and then it goes to the next part, and he says, when you are harvesting in your field and you overlook a sheep, do not go back and get it. And we do Chester the cheetah. What are you saying, Lord? We don't do that. We drop something. That's